Center of financial power in America, perhaps the money capital of the world. Globally oriented financial firms based here in the New York Stock Exchange that operates here have extraordinary influence on the politics and policies of this country. Has elected them, and in fact these financial firms are trying to undo the regulations and new laws governing them imposed by the Congress. The people on Wall Street are just one of a number of unelected and very powerful forces that operate in the shadows, behind the scenes. They're the media forces. They're the military and industrial forces. They're the corporate forces. And they're the forces that we'll be investigating in this television series, which asks a question that most of our media does not. Who rules America? Every 4 years, Americans go to the polls to elect a president. A ritual that goes back to the founding of the nation in 1776.
Our economy seemingly on the brink of collapse. High unemployment.
Every 4 years, politics and politicians dominate our television screens, dominate our news, and dominate our national discourse.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
Independent watchdogs called this president.
President Barack Obama is running for re-election.
Mitt Romney stood with Big Oil for their tax breaks, attacking higher mileage standards in renewables.
He is attacking and being attacked by Republicans.
He said he would turn this economy around in 3 years, or he'd be looking at a one-term proposition. We're here to collect, all right?
The two parties may be fighting a political war, but pundits label it a horse race, fueled literally by billions of dollars in campaign contributions used for pervasive advertising.
Where one president's failed policies really hit home. Welcome to Obamaville.
The focus is on political personalities, not the forces they represent. A large industry of commentators and pollsters are paid to tell us who's ahead and who's behind. The focus invariably is on the candidates, not the issues. But everyone knows the campaigns are run behind the scenes by professional strategists, media experts, and political advisors.
Then there's going to be a one-term proposition.
Political ads are cynical and slick. Almost every word is scripted. Symbols trump substance. Slogans are market tested, aimed at promoting perception and reinforcing prejudices. Marketing is the mission. Selling, not telling. Well, this whole spectacle is presented as a triumph of democracy, as if the candidate who wins will run the country. But being in office doesn't necessarily mean being in power. Americans believe they are determining their future. Are they? Do most know, or are they ever told who rules America?
I just think that these people you can't really see them.
Yeah?
That's why
The people who rule America
people are behind the scenes. They are
invisible.
to the general public.
Do you think people really know what's going on?
To some extent, yes, and to some extent, no.
To what extent yes, to what extent no?
About 50-50.
Rules America? There's no one right answer. Pulitzer Prize-winning American historian Eric Foner says it's a question that raises many more questions about power that works in the shadows.
Rules America. There's no one single, easily defined group who rules America, but I think, not just now, but I think for a couple of generations, we have had what the sociologist C. Wright Mills called in the 1950s a power elite, an interlocking set of connections of people in business, in politics, in the military, who pretty much determine the parameters of possible change. It's not that they rule America in a conspiratorial way, and of course there are elected officials, but the leeway of those officials is constrained by what you might call the permanent government. Presidents come and go, but there's a kind of permanent establishment, what President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, but now it's more a military-financial complex, that really, as I say, determines the limits.
We're at the Left Forum, a gathering of progressive intellectuals and scholars and students held every year here in New York City. There are 1,400 speakers this year. They don't agree on everything, but they do agree that America is not the democracy it claims to be. They all want to know who rules America.
Professor Stanley Aronowitz writes about the research of this man, C. Wright Mills, who a half-century ago wrote about the existence of a power elite that activists today refer to as the 1%, the people who run things.
His contribution to understanding the nature of power in America is in the first place to identify three institutional orders that really together form the power elite. An elite that is, generally speaking, unresponsive to the people, unresponsive to democratic liberties and democratic procedures. And he said the three groups were the corporate capitalist institutions, the military, and the third one was the top layer of the political directorate, he called them, and they are the national leaders like the executive branch of government. Not even Congress. He said Congress was in the middle levels of power. It doesn't really share the decision to make war, the major economic policies and so on. It participates at some level, but basically it's out of power. And he said that really has undercut the whole pretense of progressive and of representative government.
Why, in recent surveys, only 7 to 9% of the American people in both parties believe that the Congress, the so-called People's House of Government, is representative and capable of solving the country's problems. Politicians are trapped in a polarized and highly partisan stalemate. Who does exercise the power to decide what the country's priorities and policies should be? J.K. Fowler, an editor of The Mantle, a political magazine.
I think it's extremely complicated. I think there's not one particular answer for it. I think that a lot of the stuff going on in America right now is being led by money, and moneyed interests in Washington in particular. But I think there's a bubbling movement from the ground up as well that's happening.
Is there a ruling class in America, or is that an outdated concept?
No, I'm a strong believer that there's a class, in particular in New York City, where, but I don't think they're not hidden away in some room with various deeds in mind. It's more structural. There's certain clubs they go to, there's certain streets they live on. They're interacting with one another more.
We put that question to Erin Crowell, a 30-year-old working-class mother from a small town in Wisconsin who is working 2 jobs while pursuing her education.
Ask you, like, who runs America? Who rules America? What is your, what is your perception of that?
People that have the money to do so, people that have the money and the resources to send a lobbyist to Washington, like nobody from my town could afford to send a lobbyist, and say, hey, Harley Davidson is, threatening to move their plants to China unless, everybody takes pay cuts, and could literally shut our town down, We can't afford to defend ourselves.
Do you feel, as an American citizen, that you have power, in our country? Do you feel as if you have the ability to get your dream achieved?
I feel like it's slipping away. I don't think I do, because it feels like the closer and closer I would get to that, just a dream for me is to finish college, and take care of myself and take care of my son, but even that now, you know, and I understand, like, a lot of people in my position aren't even able to get that far now.
So if the citizens who are supposed to be in charge don't feel they are, who does? What we found is that by and large, it's the wealthiest Americans who call the shots through unelected institutions that drive agendas in their own interests. There may be a cabal running things, but in the end, the state and the system merges, argues Canadian political analyst Leo Panitch.
I don't think there's an external force controlling the American state. The American state is capitalist to its core, in the very way it's organized. It doesn't do it because there's too much influence from Wall Street. It does it because it is structurally embedded with Wall Street. It doesn't do it because there's too much influence from the military-industrial complex. It does it because the military-industrial complex is inside the state, is funded by the state, is part of the state.
Sure, there are people who conspire and there's people who act in secret, but capitalism is not a conspiracy. The people who have the wealth, they're not a conspiracy. We know who they are. We know how they collect this money. They take it out of our pocket, they put it in theirs, and it's not a big mystery.
There seems to be corporate forces, in addition to Wall Street, that essentially help guide our political and economic direction. Are America's top corporations. Political analyst Michael Clare has studied the political economy of oil for 20 years and says a lack of media coverage keeps the public in the dark.
Does the media cover it? The media doesn't cover this for the most part. In fact, the media is largely in league because of the advertising dollars that the oil and gas lobby provides. They're very heavily dependent on advertising revenue, so they're very careful in what they say.
Who are they accountable to? Are there laws really controlling and regulating what they do?
There are laws, but they have been written largely by their lobbyists to favor them. So, in fact, the laws, for the most part, are in their favor, not in the favor of most Americans.
Is there an issue where we've seen this very clearly, where the interests of the oil industry or the energy industry is in conflict with the interests of Americans?
Well, I would give an example that the oil industry has been pushing for drilling in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico and off the coast of Alaska, for example, and they get all kinds of tax benefits for that kind of deep water drilling, and they were able to do so during the Bush period with absolutely no oversight whatsoever, hence the Deepwater Horizon disaster.
Most Americans experience the oil industry in two places. At the gas pump, where prices often rise because of speculation, not just supply and demand, and also through TV advertising that paints this very profitable business in the most positive of terms.
I'm still here, and so is BP. We're committed to the Gulf, for everyone who loves it and everyone who calls it home.
That's good for our country's energy security and our economy.
Brings us to another set of corporations, the media companies. Jeff Cohen has been in the media and written books about its impact in shaping how Americans think about their country and its system of power. He says media companies push propaganda for war.
It's the same exact media quoting the same exact experts that pushed our country and the world into a war with Iraq. And we were told by these media, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't know, we made a mistake, next time we'll be more vigilant. But here we are next time, 10 years later, and the same media are blowing smoke about a weapons program in Iran that doesn't exist. There was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq either. And so we're hearing, it's like, when the war drums are beating, and I worked in mainstream television news in this country during the run-up to the Iraq War. when the war drums are beating, they don't let you put on opposing views. We try to get opposing views that question the evidence, the intelligence that would justify an attack on Iraq, but we were kicked off the air. And now you're finding it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare that's happening again.
At the same time, Jeff, most people who work in major media, and I of course did as well, don't believe this. They don't buy this. They feel like they do have the freedom to cover issues and that the networks are much more diverse in their point of view than outsiders like you and maybe now me would say.
Well, the way to rebut that fiction is just to look at what happened in the wake of the Iraq invasion. Those of us who questioned the evidence that they were a weapons of mass destruction threat, we were totally right, and most of us got kicked out of the TV networks. The people who got it wrong have promoted up. So this idea of diversity in the mainstream media or good journalism will win out certainly hasn't been proven in the last 10 years, where the journalists who got it right have been punished, sanctioned, or kicked out of the media. And the journalists who got it wrong, most of them have more power today to blow smoke at Iran than they had even when they were blowing smoke at Iraq.
People, the people who own institutions, are usually very conscious of their power, not just as individuals, but as part of a dominant class, says independent TV producer Brian Drolet.
A lot of talk here about Democrats and Republicans. Should we vote for the Democrats? Should we vote for the Republicans? There's a lot of talk about, you know, the rich versus the 99%. But it's kind of, you know, there's a certain kind of amnesia about the structure of our society that at one point in this country at least had some currency. You know, in the 30s and even in the 60s, you can talk about the working class. Nobody talks about the working class. It's all about there's a middle class and then there's the 1%. As if there's, and I guess then there's some, you know, poor blacks and Latinos or something, right? And I think that that word has been sanitized and scrubbed out of the vocabulary of the people of the United States, including out of the vocabulary of the left. Now, that's not the entire left, but even the people that use the word class don't seem to have the ability to phrase it in a way that actually means something to people.
To talk about class is not to talk about a conspiracy, but a complex system that's evolved over the years, a system that is stratified and uses campaign contributions and lobbying to ensure that the politicians do the bidding of the companies. So these are the building blocks of the analysis we'll explore in this series on Who Rules America. The argument is simple but hard for many Americans to comprehend because many of us want to believe the myths we learned in school that make us feel superior to other countries and other peoples. This has been called American exceptionalism. Many in America believe that God created this country as the greatest country on earth, and that's what makes it so special.
So you really have to start with that as a basis for how the United States was founded.
Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz is one leader of America's indigenous people, the first Americans.
They were the ones to be eliminated because it was their land that was wanted, not even their labor. Like in Latin America, the indigenous people were enslaved and made into peasants, peons. But in North America, the Anglo-colonialism in Canada, the U.S., New Zealand, and Australia had the motive of simply wiping them out and taking their land. So it's not just that they weren't included, they were to be eliminated.
And so questions about the custodians of real power and who rules America lead back to debates on how to remake power, how to challenge its distribution, and make it more transparent and accountable. These are the issues that the Occupy Wall Street movement is raising as it challenges institutional power in an attempt to revive grassroots democracy. David DeGraw explains Occupy's origins.
I mean, it was like such a confluence of events. You know, everything was moving in this direction.
You know, I was looking at around the world. You know, there was protests happening in Egypt, and then it moved to, you know, the Arab Spring, Tunisia, and all throughout Europe, and came back, and it was just a matter of time before it hit the United States. And really, if you look, the occupations globally, you know, they became like the thing to do. So it was just a natural progression for it to show up here. I feel like it shows up here because, you know, even though wealth is so concentrated, you know, the people have a media system where they're so propagandized and they feel isolated. But, you know, Occupy shows that people are, you know, not suffering alone. They're coming out and raising awareness, and we change the national discourse.
The movement is up against powerful forces with large budgets and the backing of police forces and the political establishment. While these activists are on the front lines of the fight for a people-ruled America, many of its people share the same hope.
Do you have a sense of class being important in this country? That there being like an upper class or working class?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I'm a waitress at a very nice restaurant, and it's very clear to me, you know, what my role is and who I am, you know, and you can tell just from the dialogue that I have with people, you know. Recently, I talked to a general manager of a fairly large business in our town, and you know, when I mentioned that I was going to a public school, you know, I got kind of an eye roll, and oh yeah, my tax dollars pay for that, you know, and it's.
Do you feel like there's all this resentment against working people, kind of feeling like they don't deserve what little they're getting?
Absolutely, absolutely, and especially, you know, with the recent attacks on public sector employees, like on teachers, and you know, people are saying, you know, they don't deserve those benefits. We all don't get those benefits, so they don't deserve them either, you know. Or like, why isn't the conversation, maybe we should all work to get those for everyone instead of taking it away from the few that do have them.
You know, when I hear you talking, you know, I realize there's such a bigger picture here that most people even understand. That we have, you know, a country where the dream is slipping away for so many people, and they don't feel particularly powerful. They don't feel like they can do anything. They can achieve anything. They can make a difference.
Right. Well, I think the dream is shifted to hopefully I wake up tomorrow and I'll be able to pay my rent and keep a roof over my head, you know. Or it's just like, you know, I'll work on achieving my dream tomorrow, but today, you know, I have to go to class, you know, and I have to get my work done. I have to go to work, and I have to try to squeeze a couple hours of sleep in, and then, you know, and it's.
Now you're here at this conference with all these brilliant theoreticians and analysts and professors and experts and leaders, and how do you feel about this idea that people have to get together to make a difference?
I think it's wonderful. I feel so blessed to be able to be here with people like that, because I want to learn. You know, somebody had said to me, well, why don't you leave where you are? And I don't think that's the answer. I think that it's my job as somebody who cares about these things to learn from these people, to learn from these brilliant minds, and so I can take this back to people and show them and explain to them where we don't have access to this kind of thing every day, you know, and so hopefully try to enlighten them a little bit.
Erin expresses the hopes of many ordinary Americans who want to reshape the nature of power so that the 99%, not just the 1%, can rule. But as you can see and hear, it's not a battle she feels she is winning. Perhaps that's why she, like many, want to know who rules America. The question of who rules America has been debated throughout America's own history. It was originally raised and answered to some degree by the American Revolution in the 1770s that fought for independence from the British Crown so that Americans, at least some Americans, could rule themselves, or at least they hoped they could.
We're at Columbia University with Dr. Eric Foner, a historian and writer and teacher here at the university for a long, long period of time.
I think what is unusual today is two things. One, the degree of inequality. Never before has the very, very top, the 1%, had so much of the national income and wealth in its own hands. And, you know, so that the gap is greater than ever before. And secondly, you know, Occupy Wall Street is not primarily a movement of farmers, of laborers. It doesn't have the same base. People need to learn history. That's part of our job, to know that this issue has been around for a long time. There is nothing un-American about raising the question of economic plutocracy, economic inequality. It's as American as apple pie. And, you know, I think that the Occupy Wall Street people are, you know, legitimate heirs of a long and venerable tradition in this country.
Today, the activists of Occupy Wall Street are continuing the fight for independence and economic justice from domination by a small elite in the name of the majority, the 99%.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, the scares her.
Because it's yeah, fear of the
Alien
unknown.
1 movie.
Oh my
Alien
god.
1's like, that to me is the scariest scary movie ever.
What's
that
is it?
movie was terrifying.
Is it Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind that takes place in Alaska? Where they combine the actual footage of the woman's real therapy sessions and stuff.
I don't know. I don't
Jamie,
think I
you know what
saw
I'm
that
talking
one.
about?
Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind?
It's third or fourth kind. Which one's the original movie?
Third kind.
So this one's fourth kind. I'm almost certain. Probably wrong.
I've never heard of it.
It's a really good movie. There's a woman up in I want to say Juneau, or no. What's the Nome, Alaska? And back in the day, she was she became famous because she claimed aliens were basically like showing up and abducting her and stuff, right? And eventually, her kid got abducted by aliens, or so that's the case, and they accused her of like killing the kid or whatever it may be. Obviously, nobody believes that this woman's son was abducted, her daughter was abducted by aliens.
So it's not currently available in our country?
It's like in Canada. I think it's showing up weird.
You can only get it in Canada?
I don't know.
What?
That's strange.
Interesting.
But they have it's a movie about this case, but they splice in real footage of her therapy sessions she had to go to, that she was going to while she was being abducted each night. And they do this I don't really know how to describe it, this deep meditative state that makes you recall your dreams, and she's like describing all the things that were happening to her, these aliens, and she starts screaming, she starts like levitating up from the couch a little bit, like it's creepy as shit. It's a really good movie. It's my favorite abduction movie I've ever seen. And obviously nobody believes her, she runs into the one person. Oh yeah, like that old footage is like the real footage.
Wow. So, here's my issue with the alien abduction thing. Other than there's not like any real solid evidence that you point to that's very convincing. It always happens at night. And it always happens during periods where people sleep. And when you're sleeping, I'm not saying always, okay, I'm sure there's some stories out there, I'm sorry. But most of the stories I've ever heard are people in their bed, they can't move, aliens abduct them,
Paralysis.
or they're in a car, the car stops, they wake up, aliens abducted them. When you go to sleep and you dream, there are psychedelic chemicals that your brain makes. And we don't know how much they're making. We don't know what effect that's having on your dreams. We don't know what is going on. What is going on with dreams? What is going on with vivid dreams? What is going on with dreams that they're indiscernible from real life, and sometimes, in a strange way. Like, what is that? Is that a psychedelic state your brain goes into every night?
Yeah.
And if chemicals vary in human beings, serotonin varies, dopamine varies, everything varies, testosterone varies, estrogen varies, it varies. Wouldn't you just assume those psychedelic chemicals would vary? And wouldn't you just assume that sometimes maybe even people are in very agitated, anxiety-ridden states, high cortisol levels, perhaps maybe those chemicals are coming out in abundance too. Now,
So
if
it's a
you're
spike in it,
lying
yeah.
in bed and you're having an insanely vivid and terrifying interaction with aliens every night, because your brain is just dumping psychedelics into you, and this is your big fear, so you're going to get abducted by aliens again, and then there they are again, leaning over your bed and reaching for your
Constant paranoia.
And then here's the mindfuck of all mindfucks. Maybe psychedelics are a gateway to some other reality, some other dimension that's accessible by these creatures.
I like this.
And that when you are getting abducted, you really are getting abducted. Like whatever your being is, or your spirit, or whatever is you, is getting, you're interacting with these things. And it feels real because it is real. And because we're thinking about the ability to come in contact with other life forms as being a physical thing, it might be that there's a chemical gateway in your mind that when breached, you enter into a dimension where physical bodies don't exist anymore, and everything moves in this constant soup of geometric patterns. And that whatever your consciousness is, whatever your soul is decoupled from the body and thrown into this realm.
I imagine that's probably what happens at death.
Probably is what happens at death. It's probably what it's all, I mean, that's probably why people think about it that way, that you're going to transcend into heaven. You're going to go into this new place. It might be true. It might be, like, a lot of the old depictions of, like, what happens when you enter into a psychedelic state. I've heard this multiple times, that it's like a well of souls, that you're interacting with souls that are like completely unattached to a physical presence.
Yeah.
And maybe you're getting layers and layers of that depending upon how fucked up you are while you're sleeping. And maybe some of those layers are, boom, aliens in the room with you.
Peeled back.
Just aliens in the room with you. And maybe they can do that. Maybe they can visit you while you're in those states. Maybe that's what's happening too.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, the scares are.
Because it's fear of the
Alien
unknown.
1 movie.
Oh my
Alien
god.
1 was like, that to me is the scariest scary movie ever.
What's
that
is it?
movie was terrifying.
Is it Close Encounters of the
Printed in full color.
Good news! Bill Gates is
investing in lab-grown food, meats and lovely coatings for fruits? Is this in order to reverse climate change and feed the world? Or is it so that the entire process of food, from growing it to selling it, can be patented and controlled by Bill Gates? Hello there, you 6.5 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom. If we remain alert, strong and focused, we can discern truth from fiction. We can analyse crazy stories from across the globe, including this one. Bill Gates appears to be attempting to patent new types of food that are grown in labs and centrally controlled. Remember, the key issue that we discuss here is global corporatism. Are there a network of agencies and interests that are able to transcend national democracy and all forms of democracy, actually, and impose everything on you, from censorship to the ability to control food sources? Certainly, our friend Bandana Shiva believes this is precisely the case. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments what you think Bill Gates' role in the world is. Is it that he's a philanthropist who just wants to feed people, or does he have other motives, and what are they? Let us know right now. This phenomena of lab-grown fruit.
You've heard of lab-grown meat?
Yes, I have heard of it. I'm disgusted by it. Instead of harmonising with nature, instead of looking at ways to decentralise power, instead of empowering farmers to do their jobs properly, and I say this as a vegan who doesn't even eat meat, instead of having sensible farms with sensible farmers who have visually anomalous and morally reprehensible new food source. Yeah, we'll do the second.
But what about lab-grown fruit? New Zealand scientists at Plant and Food Research are looking at how to produce fruit without a tree, vine or bush.
Why are we doing this? Why are we going to all this trouble to subvert and deny nature? Why not just find new ways of taking care of the planet together, which could be done sensibly by decentralising, by placing an imaginary grid across the world and empowering people within each territory to run their own lives? Thing is, there's less profit in that. Why is there never any research on how to break up food monopolies? Now over in the lab, people are experimenting on stopping Bill Gates from being so bloody greedy. Stop it, Bill. Stop it. No, I won't. Bill, stop it. No, I want to control everything. Bill, you don't need any more farms. Just one more farm.
It may not look like it now.
Because what it does look like is bogies, boogers, snot. Look at what it does look like is nasal discharge. Sir, would you care to indulge? No, you're all right. I'll stick with the Ferrero Rochers.
But this petri dish has the makings of blueberries.
We could have a kind of a whole new growing system for fresh plant foods.
They're preparing for dystopia. Look at the ways you can see the preparation for dystopia take place. Militarisation of the police force, growing food in laboratories, having robot dogs patrolling the police and drones patrolling the skies, censorship laws everywhere, the ability for organisations like the WHO to bypass national democracy, centralised currencies where you can switch off the financial power of individuals at will. All of these stories, I swear, we're going to look back at this and say, look, it was so obvious what was happening. We just watched it like, hey, that's pretty funny. It's a petri dish full of boogers. That petri dish of boogers means that you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell.
A system that looks completely different from what we've always known.
We're all aware that the world is changing.
Yeah, we are. Thanks to Bill Gates, we're all aware that the world is changing. Bill Gates actually gave money for these boogers and this haircut.
We've got climate change, which is going to cause quite disruption to our growing systems and where we live and how we grow and where we grow.
And how much authority we give Bill Gates.
Plant and Food Research is working with cells from a range of fruits, including cherries, peaches and apples. Scientists say among the benefits could be reducing the environmental impact of food production.
I think that we're racing down the wrong trajectory, don't you? Instead of going, do you know what, do you think we're creating food in a way that's detrimental? Are there any ways that we could improve that? Let's consult with a variety of agricultural experts from around the world and ensure that we don't put financial imperatives across our practical ecological considerations. Instead of having that conversation, it's like, oh, we could just grow stuff in a lab and carry on racing towards the apocalypse. A profitable apocalypse.
Growers have mixed views.
Lab-grown fruit seems to be making a solution to a problem we don't seem to have. Like, we have plenty of fruit to supply to the market.
There's no problem with that. Breaking unnecessary Frankenstein fruit. We don't actually need any more fruit. Snot-covered blueberries. Well, I've just grown some out here. Get that filth away from me, you goddamn racist farmer lunatic. Agriculture in itself, while providing the miracle of incredible availability of food for former hunter-gatherers like you and me, also created interesting hierarchies that are becoming further emboldened with each new successive revolution. When technology and agriculture combined, what you'll have is the ability to absolutely control food. And increasingly, I question the motives of the people that financially back these endeavours. We're always told this is going to help people, this is going to feed the poor, but you can find ways of feeding the poor. Now, it doesn't seem to be a bloody priority, does it? Let me know in the comments if you agree.
Researchers say it's not about trying to replicate traditional fruit, but rather creating something new and equally appealing.
Why trying to go to war with fruit for? What kind of world are we living in when fruit's a problem? Fruit's alright, leave fruit alone. Fruit was never the problem. The problem is centralised systems that have become corrupted, communicating with one another, disempowering independent organisations, whether they're agricultural, media, financial or political, in order to create a vast hegemony in which all of us are just obedient little prisoners. Yeah, but also, look at the shape of that blueberry. It's disgusting. Wouldn't you prefer to have a square one? Oh, alright, I'll try one. Here you go.
If you're eating food, you need to have something that tastes good and has a nice texture and is pleasant to eat.
Where have they got fruit for? Where's the fruit go?
So look at fruit, disgusting bloody things, isn't it? Have you seen this strawberry, nasty little thing? What is all them seeds around the inside of it? Bill Gates isn't able to patent those bloody things. Let's get them off with my shaky tweezers.
What are we putting into these lab-grown fruit to make them nutritional that we're then putting another heap of stuff in there to keep them nutritional or to counteract that? And that would be our biggest concern with it.
There's this constant mistrust of nature herself, the idea that fruit somehow is malign and problematic. Fruit and nature evolved alongside us. We are it. We are not separate from it. The idea that we are overlords that need to construct things in a lab and that will somehow be beneficial. Remember how peaches used to be? Yeah, delicious. This peach will protect you from the next pandemic. How do you know there's going to be another pandemic? Just eat your fucking peach. The next avocados you buy at a grocery store might stay fresh at least twice as long as they used to. James Rogers founded Appeal, stupid name, in 2012, and the company has raised a total of $110 million in funding from investors who include, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Oh, sure they won't want anything in return for that investment. Rogers Appeal thinks it can combat the problem of food waste with its primary product, a tasteless, odourless, edible coating made from plant materials. Okay, plant materials. Let's hold that phrase in your mind for a moment. Appeal can keep produce like avocados or oranges from going bad for weeks longer than usual. Again, it's another bolting on to the natural world. I suppose the human project of civilization is fundamentally a denial of nature, but surely there are ways for us to evolve in harmony with nature, for us to acknowledge who we are, what our relationship with the earth and one another is, rather than continuing down this mythic path of progressivism, which seems to be continually empower one set of interests, usually at the cost of ordinary people. The product, Eddie Peel, they're really pleased with that pun, aren't they, is described as a way of prolonging the freshness of produce and as an edible post-harvest coating. Delicious. Eat an edible post-harvest coating. I don't want to. It's making my teeth fall out. We'll grow you a new tooth. Open here. There you go. It feels stunning. My tooth hurts. It's not your tooth. It's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's tooth. Quite agree. Us, Bill. Imagine if we go to Monsanto or McDonald's and ask for a bit of sponsorship. What kind of answers do you think we get? The answer is no. But these guys sponsored us. Therefore, I endorse them, and if you can use their product, please do. Stay to the end, I'll make it funny. Now, do you think your face enjoyed the summer as much as you did? If you're British, your face barely had a summer. But ladies and gentlemen, here's Ella from Rockford, Illinois. I have both age and acne spots, and this stuff is actually fading both of them. This serum is worth every penny. That is Ella talking about the dark spot corrector from Genucel, a must-have after months of record heat and humidity. What's causing this stuff? Sunspots, brown spots, discoloration, and even red inflamed patches all appear in front of your very eyes, and it's got to be stopped. And here's the Genucel amazing guarantee. You'll see results in one day or your money back. So you've just got 24 hours. Take advantage of Genucel's most popular package, which now includes the dark spot corrector, plus the classic Genucel bags and puffiness treatment, all at, I can't believe I'm saying this, at 70% off. So you can try the best skincare in the world for yourself, completely risk-free. It's simple. Go to Genucel.com/promo today and start looking years, even decades younger tomorrow. That's Genucel.com/promo. You'll see results day one and you'll get compliments everywhere you go. Guaranteed. Lovely. Who doesn't like a compliment? Appeal's plant-based protective coating is made of materials that naturally exist in the peels, seeds and pulp of fruits and vegetables that we commonly consume. I'm hearing a lot there about how seed oils are really bad for us and they're giving us heart conditions, cancer, diabetes. I mean, haven't you heard that from like Callie Means? Let me know in the comments. The safety of these compounds have been verified by regulatory authorities, including the US Food and Drug Administration, and you know where they get their money, and the World Health Organization, and you know where they get their money. So It's extraordinary to see that what's offered as an unbiased regulatory body is funded, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation significantly fund the WHO. Like, what are they doing? Hey, excuse me, I'd like to get some approval for this lacquer that I'm going to put on fruit to make fruit last longer. And could I add me? Oh, I can approve of this. I'm going to need a little more money. Oh, come on, you. Well, it's all for a good cause. We got to do something about climate change. God, it's so expensive. Like, I keep it all. How can you have your product verified by an organisation that you're the second biggest contributor to? That doesn't make sense. That's not regulation. That's a way of avoiding regulation through careful investment. But it's not just lab-grown fruits that Bill Gates is interested in. It's money. No, not money. Also, lab-grown meats. For you, of course. And the climate. Bill Gates has said rich nations would help the global fight against climate change by moving to 100% synthetic beef. Let's see if he's investing in any. Gates has already invested in lab-grown meat startup Upside Foods and has invested in multiple plant-based meat companies, including Impossible and Beyond Meat. Oh, thanks for the financial and dietary tips, Bill. One side of Bill comes up with the idea, the other side of Bill approves it, and the rest of us have to eat that stuff. But how will these new scientific advances even positively impact climate change? Lab-grown meat has been touted as a way to save the planet, but a new study suggests its green credentials are not as solid as many believe. Researchers have revealed that lab-grown or cultured meat produced by cultivating animal cells is up to 25 times worse for the climate than real beef. Oh, well, thanks. It's only 25 times worse for the climate. Production of real meat has a huge carbon footprint because it requires water, feed, and the clearing of trees to make way for cattle. Despite this, experts say the carbon footprint of lab-grown meat could be orders of magnitude higher once the industry grows. Experts think lab-grown meat is set to become more ubiquitous in the next 10 years, transforming from a niche concept to a common fridge staple. But for this to happen, production methods will have to be scaled up from mere Petri dishes to massive energy-intensive industrial units. You can't make a comparison between a Petri dish and an energy-intensive industrial unit. Look at this. This is much less energy than that cow. Okay, well, can you make a lot of it? We certainly can. Fire up, boys! It's an entirely different proposition at that scale. And even as a vegan, who only actually doesn't eat meat because I think it's cruel, I still find it somehow distasteful, unpleasant, weird, and at odds with the direction that we're supposed to be going in, to eat meat grown in a laboratory. This is not the solution. This is just another variation on the problem. In the study, the scientists estimated the energy required for stages of lab-grown meat production, from the ingredients making up the growth medium, and the energy required to power laboratories, and compared this with beef. They largely focused on the quantity of growth medium components, including glucose, amino acids, vitamins, growth factors, salts, and minerals. They found the global warming potential of lab-grown meat ranged from 246 to 1,508 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram of lab-grown meat, which is 4 to 25 times greater than the average global warming potential of retail beef. Again, I'm not a person who is pro-meat, and I'm certainly not pro-industrialised meat. I am pro-freedom, I am pro you making your own choices for your family and your diet, and I am aware that there is a global effort to disempower and destroy farmers. I believe because farmers are an important part of the chain of survival, i.e. they are connected to the land, they are growing food. There is no question there are challenges around agriculture and areas where agriculture could be improved. But I don't think that the motives of these centralised globalist endeavours is to improve the ecology. I don't think it's to improve anything. I think it's to gain control and to make money. I think those are always the motives. I don't believe that these kind of interests are here to help us. Let me know what you think in the comments. I want agricultural workers and farmers to feel empowered and part of a community. We've moved so far away from connected communal models where all of us feel like we have invested in the food cycle, the cycle of life, communication with one another, that we're willing to countenance an idea where why don't we give centralised authority to some lab-grown meat lab?
Digital Detective. Enroll in the new Google Cybersecurity Certificate to jumpstart your career in a high-growth field. You'll develop the skills employers want and get job search support after graduation.
Grown fruit, patented seeds, unelected powerful entities that have been half regulated by other unelected entities that they also fund. This seems to me to be a further advance of globalism that's plainly taken us in the wrong direction, that isn't popular with ordinary people, and no one asked us if we wanted it. And the only way they can continue to justify it is like, oh, we're helping you, we're helping you, we're helping the environment. But the facts do not support that. Earlier this year in the US, the Food and Drug Administration declared cultured meat safe for human consumption, paving the way for them to be sold stateside. But in the UK, the Food Standards Agency is yet to do the same. Better call the FDA. Hello? Could you approve this new lab-grown meat?
Well, look, I know that that's also me, so I'm gonna say yes. In fact, this is a waste of money on this phone call, but at least it didn't damage the environment.
The industry has since grown to more than 150 companies as of late 2022, backed by $2.6 billion in investment, according to the Good Food Institute. Let's see what Vandana Shiva said about this issue, and in particular Bill Gates, at the Community Festival earlier this year.
When the junk food industry was trying to rewrite our laws on food safety, food and health safety, I wrote a very quick briefing paper for our parliament, and it's called Food Fascism. And I said, stop this food fascism. So when your seed is controlled by Monsanto, your trade is controlled, your chicken are controlled by Cargill, your junk food and therefore you're creating disease is controlled by Coke, Pepsi, Nestle. All of this is a system of food fascism. And then the next step of Silicon Valley and the techno billionaires wanting to invest in fake food so that not only do you have one patent on a seed, now you have 14 patents on an Impossible Burger. On every fake food, there are hundreds of patents because every synthetic artificial element has a patent behind it. Can you imagine if they hold the whole world to ship to fake food, how much royalty collection they'll have? That's what they are looking at. And what we have to do is take the simple thing. Same simple thing as a scarf, right? If Gandhi could spin and say, we will make our own cloth, and we said in Navdanya, we will save our own seeds. We will never let seeds be the monopoly of the Monsantos and the buyers. We have to do that now. And we have enough time because not only is their fake food not ready, it's failing financially. We're doing a report. Many companies have gone bankrupt. Many companies are bankrupt. So we need to look at the failed system, the fascist system, and say, no, you're part of the fascist system. Don't try and call us fascists. We are the new freedom movement.
So there you are. Is lab-grown meat, lab-grown fruit coating a way to help us and preserve food and save the environment? Or is it an attempt to garner patents, to control food, to control yet another aspect of our lives, to separate us from nature, to separate us from one another, to separate us even from the concept of democracy because everything is centralised and regulated in some stratosphere inaccessible to ordinary people? Is it food fascism, or is it pro-climate, pro-people? I guess you have to decide, who do you trust, Bill Gates or Vandana Shiva? I'm going with Vandana Shiva. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments? Give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember, turn on the notification bell and subscribe, and join us every day over on the other place. In the meantime, please, if you can, stay free.
Lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat.
It's crazy to think that this is our home. We did this. We created.
I mean, I don't know, man. And then, like you say, for people who are like vegan and vegetarian and eat all these plant-based foods, the Impossible Burger. It has how many patents on it? How many different chemicals and all this shit to make up a plant-based burger? Like, no, I'm good. I just rather eat the dead cow, I guess. You know, like you're not fooling me with this. It's an Impossible Burger, yeah. Impossible to digest with all these chemicals and compounds y'all make this shit out of. It's just, I mean, I don't know. They try to get us at every corner.
Egypt is a sensational place, literally drowning in history and intrigue. Nobody is denying that. Dig for 5 minutes in literally any place, and you may unearth something fascinating. But anywhere as interesting as that is guaranteed to also have some secrets to hide, and when those are unearthed, it's a lot less educational and a whole lot more horrifying. These are the 20 most incredible finds in Egypt that scare scientists. Number 20. The Tomb of Osiris. First, we'll head to 2015, where the discovery of a tomb was quite shocking indeed. Not because they had found a legendary figure per se, but rather because they had found the tomb of a kind of god. A Spanish-Italian archaeological mission discovered a complete symbolic tomb of the god Osiris with multiple shafts and chambers at Algorna Necropolis on Luxor's west bank. The tomb can be dated to the 25th dynasty and consists of a large hall supported with 5 pillars. Its northern wall had a hall with a rock-hewn staircase that led down to a funerary complex where an Osiris statue would be found in the core of the vaulted chapel. Apparently, the tomb had originally been discovered in the 1880s, but they couldn't get it out, so they simply left it behind. But now, everyone can attempt to learn about this tomb and see why someone had made it. Better yet, we may even eventually be able to learn who made it, and you would think that the person who did it would sign their name, but it wasn't very common in those days. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Osiris was the first ever pharaoh. Osiris was murdered by his brother Seth, the god of disorder and chaos. Seth then locked Osiris inside of a box, poured molten lead into it, and then threw it into the Nile. Later, he ripped the body into pieces and flung them across Egypt. Clearly, the two did not get along. Osiris's wife Isis would then build a shrine on each place that the pieces had landed, and that's why you see so many shrines that are dedicated to this god in Egypt. While it may not be the new discovery in Egypt that scares scientists, it is something that can cause pause for thought, because if someone was willing to go this far to make a tomb such as this, how many other godly tombs are simply waiting to be found? Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification.
There are a lot of claims in the document about crazy things that the Germans can do. Forget about just the lasers.